Good morning, everybody. Lawrence Fleming. I hope your weekend was good. The New Year's is over. We're into the new year. And I had an unusual event last night. I had a dream. I don't normally wake up and see my dreams, and I don't get to watch them take shape a little bit. So this was an unusual event for me. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit. I don't have a whole lot of details, because even in the best of times, I don't remember a lot. But my dream was sort of scary from the point of view that we have the new year, we have the new Congress coming in. They're going to be swearing everybody in soon. Our speaker will change, the Speaker of the House. And the hierarchy is President, Vice President, and Speaker of the House. So my dream is that there was a coup and that they took out, now this is a dream, so I don't know if it's true. They took out the President and the Vice President, and the Speaker became the President. Or at least the one in power. So, I don't know. It looked to be, it looked just like a traditional U.S. government, but it could be another government. But I felt it was the regular government. In my dream, there was a press conference going on. That was already going on when all this started. And it was interesting. It'd make a good movie, even if it didn't come true. It's like they're moving the president around, trying to keep him away because they realize it's an internal thing. What do you do if there's an internal rebellion? Who do you trust? That can be a problem. So the one guy protecting the president in this case, I couldn't see anybody's faces well enough to know who it is. One of the ladies in there saying, "You didn't protect my husband in the dream." She had dark hair, and that's not our current situation, so I don't know unless it was somebody else. You don't get subtitles, you don't get scorecards, you don't get playbills. You just got to watch the dreams as they happen. And it's an interesting tactic. The one security guy protecting I'm assuming the president, at least somebody high up, says they're coming in here and it's our own forces. And the guy says to the security guy, "How do you know that?" "Well, I'm listening." He had his earbud in. And they just said that the president is out on the north lawn and you're here. So that's why I guess it was president. So that means they're trying to get everybody away from where you're at. So we're going to play dead. So he had him laid out on the ground. This is, like I said, I'd make a good movie. Laid out on the ground. He put some blood on him. I'm not sure where he got it, to make him look like he was shot. And then the security guy goes over and lays a little ways away from him so he could watch, and pretends to be dead as well. And somebody comes in and finds him, and just to be sure, he's going to plug him again, and the security guard shoots him because he's appearing to be dead, but he's not. And that happened a couple more times, and then nobody came in anymore, and so they both lived, but it was an attempted coup. Now we know from the Bible that somebody is going to attempt and kill who will become the Antichrist. Now it's it's my understanding that it's the two witnesses that are going to do this. And then he comes back and eventually, with his newfound spiritual help from the pit, takes out the two witnesses who lie and stayed in the street essentially for 3 days. And God raises them up, resurrects them, and then raises them out of there in a type of rapture. So, We know we have something like that playing out. But I just thought that was an interesting scenario because I hadn't thought about that. It would have to be after the new Congress is sworn in, so we'd have a new speaker for that to play out and be effective. There's a lot of stuff coming down the pike. It's very obvious to anybody who's willing to open their eyes of what the government's trying to do. Chaos, disruption, creating enmity, creating hatred for the government. If you can get somebody to be mad at the government and then react, as in this dream that I had, then you can mount up forces and go against it. You can't just mount up forces unless you have a reason. So you push and you push and you push until somebody overreacts. And I'm warning everybody that you don't want to overreact. Because if you do, you're playing into the devil's hands. Don't take law into your own hands. We're told to obey the government even if you don't like it. When Jesus was here, it was under Roman occupation. He didn't try to take down the Roman government. He let them do what they were going to do. It was for all of our benefit, but they didn't know that. If Satan had known what he was doing, he wouldn't have done it. God is much more clever than Satan can ever be. So don't fear Satan. And as we talked about in my last little fun video about making a movie, we can get away with doing stuff and working within this as long as we don't challenge it. Now, if they're not telling you to break God's laws, follow the business laws. Follow we have laws in our Constitution, and I probably should read the Constitution. I don't know how many people have studied it. I don't think they even teach it anymore in school because they don't want you to know what they can get away with and what they can't. The Constitution was put together not to limit us, but to limit the government. They knew what the power of the government can do if it got out of hand. So all that we have from our founding fathers is things to prevent them from getting out of hand. Our gun laws are not in place just so that we can go hunting. They're in place in case the government gets out of hand and you need to overthrow the government. In fact, it even says someplace that it's the duty to overthrow a tyrannical government. I'm not promoting that. I'm just merely telling you history. And the same thing goes with freedom of speech. These people came from England, or at least the area controlled by the Church of England, and therefore they knew what a tyrannical government-church combination would look like and how it would work. So they didn't want that coming back here. And they knew that, eventually corruption will seep in. But they had hoped that the model that they put forward, that's why we're not a pure democracy. We're a democratic republic. It was set up this way so that way there would be checks and balances. What they never planned on is that the whole government could get corrupt. They thought at least, you got three branches, that two of them would police the third, and you'd never have the whole government become corrupt. Well, our Mr. Big T, who's no longer in office because they didn't like what he was doing, stopping the harlot, he talked about the deep state of affairs that we're in. I'm trying to figure out how to say this so that I don't hit triggers. And he goes, I didn't realize just how deep it was. Well, we know the pit that's going to be opened is a bottomless pit, And that would be a good example of how deep it is. Out of that's going to come the spirit of the Antichrist. So it's getting ready. It can't be very far away now. We keep saying that, but it's all in God's time. I talked about it jokingly about the movie stuff last time. God's already got this all written out. The timeline's already done. He doesn't have to come up with anything. He knows exactly what's going to happen and when it's going to happen and who's going to do it, all the way through from the beginning to the end. It's all his plan, and it's flawless. So if we get in there and try to change things, we're going to muck things up. But God's going to know we're going to muck things up, and he's going to come in and stop us. And we may get mad because he's stopping us from doing something, but we don't know that we're messing up his plan. Your best thing to do would be to remember our prayer. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. This is God's plan. Just pray that God's plan will happen the way he laid it out. Don't try to get in and change things. You can't. You can actually become a party of what Satan wants to have happen. You can become a part of that if you get in and try to mess it up. So, I'm not saying to just sit back and let everything happen without any kind of questioning, but some people put way too much energy in the wrong direction. It's like that joke I told about the guy hanging from the cliff. God says to let go. No, but the actual thing you should be thinking is how to get back up to the top. I don't want to let go. God says to let go. Is there anybody else up there? We can't see sometimes the planning that goes into all this until after it's over. Most of the prophets, not all of them, but most of the prophets, people didn't understand what they were talking about. They didn't understand what they were warning them about until afterwards. God warned Israel so many times, and I'm using that term to encompass all the chosen. He's warned them many times to stop doing what you're doing or I'm going to send somebody in to destroy you. He's a creature of his word. Sure enough, in comes somebody to destroy him. That's one of the problems that the modern archaeologists have in trying to dig up all this stuff around Jerusalem and other places. There's so many layers of destruction because they just don't get it. And they still don't get it. I don't get it. How they can be so stubborn and arrogant that they don't think that they need to follow God's rules. Well, part of it is they don't teach God's rules enough. Their scholars over the years have rewritten the Bible, at least their version of it. Their Talmud and Mishnah, their commentaries on the Bible, are people's opinions of what they think the Bible was trying to say. Instead of being practical and just following the Bible, they had to write their own comments. And it got to where people just stopped reading the Bible and just read the comments. I know that little trick. I was in school. Instead of reading the book, read the Cliff Notes. I actually hate to read. I don't like to read, so I actually tried that, but it didn't give you enough. If you're in a class, you got to read the book. But I tried. Anything to get out of reading. I'm a product of the public shul system, and I spell it incorrectly, or say it incorrectly on purpose, because that's the way it's spelled. I don't know if you guys remember Gallagher. The comedian, he just recently passed away. But he used to make fun of the words, and I think I've talked about him before. And the other comedian that I was trying to remember in my last video I think his name is Brad Upton now. There's a couple of modern guys that are funny. But they tell, real life stories about themselves. And one guy was just really not a very nice guy until he became a Christian. And it's the only thing that saved his marriage was becoming a Christian, because he was searching and he was not going to be happy until he was. And he was going to make sure that nobody else was happy until he was. Then he found Christ. There are many good stories like that. All right. So, an interesting dream. It may or may not happen, but I don't normally dream. So it's an interesting thing that I can have something like that come to me. People are getting ready to go out on their boats. All right. I'm doing this the day before my moving day because I've got to drive 6.5 hours to my next campsite. I'm going to start doing that here for a little while. I'm going to try to go west. And in doing so, I'm going to be having to drive. If I just drove straight through from here to the west where I want to go, it's probably 2.5 days worth of driving. I've driven it. I've driven straight through from Atlanta to Salt Lake City. 3.5 days straight. Yeah, I'm a little tired when I get there. But I do it during good weather. I wouldn't attempt that in bad weather. I happen to like driving, and my car is easy to drive. All right. I think that's all I'm going to talk about now. Let me go see if I can get some post-talk video. And then I'll see if I can get this uploaded, because internet here is just really bad. I might have to wait till I get to my new location, but at least I'll have my video done. Just keep watching what's going on in the world. You don't have to have anybody tell you that the world is in the end times. All you got to do is watch the news. And I try to talk about it in some places, like I was in the visitor center, and they just all said, well, let's not talk about that. And I go, well, it's going on around us. We can't bury our heads. Well, most of the stuff you hear are lies, which is basically an accusation to me, telling me that I'm lying. So I didn't take the bait. I see an alligator on the bank over here, so we're going to try to get over here and see if I can film this one. This looks like the female. But you've seen my alligator stuff already, so this should be no news to you. They're all over the place. It's just been too cold for them. So let me stop this and I'll get you a video of the alligator. Till we meet in the clouds. God bless. Okay, there you go. That's the female alligator. And her nest is over on that side someplace where she had her little alligators. I think they said 5. At least there were 5 eggs. And I might walk down the bank and see if I can see where the nest was. I'm going to cut it off here and then I'll get down there. Okay, well, it's kind of hard to see, but right over there is where the alligator nest was. But there's no little ones there. You can't see. You have to get closer to see the fragments of egg, but had a nice little spot there. Okay, as I walk back in from my walk here, they've got rows of boats you can rent, canoes, kayaks if you're so inclined. I'm not. They do have 2 tour boats over there that you can take one of those out. They go out with one twice a day. And there's a guy that will talk to you. And no, if you go out on that boat, you're not going to see a hippo come out of the water. This is not Disneyland. But you may see alligators come out at you. One of our rides, we actually had an alligator jump up in the air vertically where the ranger was. It scared him pretty good. There's a boat being rented over there. They're getting in that. There's supposed to be 2 alligators. We saw one. I'm looking for the other one, just in case it's out here someplace. And of course the little ones. Some of the people said they've seen those. Interesting spider webs on that bush. There are fish in here, a number of different types. There's catfish and there's some kind of a bottom fish that you don't really want to eat. But they have perch and brim and other little fish that you can if you catch them.